Welcome, fellow educators, to this explainer. Let's just dive right in and dismantle a really pervasive myth we deal with all the time in education. This idea that giftedness is simply an academic advantage. An easy ride. Today, we're looking way beyond the high test scores. We're going straight into the intense, vibrant, and, let's be honest, sometimes utterly exhausting inner lives of our gifted students. To do this, we've broken today's professional development workshop into 5 main modules. We'll start off by redefining giftedness, move into the filter of overexcitabilities, tackle those emotional molehills and mountains, look at the social disconnect, and finally wrap things up with some actual practical strategies for your classroom. All right, let's kick off Module 1, Redefining Giftedness. So as teachers, we're constantly fighting the societal myth of the perfect student who just excels synchronously in absolutely everything. But the reality, it's a completely out-of-sync phenomenological experience that honestly falls way more on the neurodivergent side of the spectrum. These kids experience massive inner conflict. They feel profoundly different, but they don't have the vocabulary to tell us why, which means they often fall into severe perfectionist traps. As a teacher, you need to watch for this step by step. First, look for the student who absolutely refuses to even start a task out of fear of failing. Second, notice the one who erases their work until there is literally a hole torn in the paper. And third, keep an eye out for the student who goes into a full meltdown over a super minor critique. This brings us to a really crucial concept, asynchrony. Basically, asynchronous development means a student's cognitive abilities, their physical development, and their social-emotional maturity, they are not growing at the same speed. Picture a 7-year-old in your 2nd grade class. They might be reading at a 5th grade level, casually discussing complex astronomy, but emotionally, they behave exactly like a 6-year-old. They are totally out of sync. This is exactly why just throwing more academic rigor at them without upping the emotional support at the exact same time can actually do real damage to their social and emotional well-being. We absolutely cannot fall into the trap of assuming that a brilliant, highly advanced mind automatically comes with adult-level emotional regulation. Keeping this one single fact in mind completely changes how we respond to them every single day. Which leads us perfectly into Module 2, the filter of overexcitabilities. Kazimir Dombrowski created this amazing framework that helps us understand how these kids physically and mentally filter their world. He identified 5 specific areas: psychomotor, sensual, emotional, imaginational, and intellectual. In these areas, a gifted student's reactions are way above average in intensity, duration, and frequency. Don't think of these as just quirky personality traits. Think of it like the volume knob on their environment is cranked all the way up to 10. They literally perceive reality in a much stronger, more multifaceted way than their typical peers do. Now, there is a bit of a debate in the psychology world about this. Some researchers argue that these intense traits are just part of the openness to experience trait in the standard Big 5 personality model. But Dombrowski, he saw it as something much deeper. He believed this was an inborn constitutional endowment, a heightened reactivity of the central nervous system itself. They are fundamentally wired to experience the world more intensely. Okay, moving into Module 3, Emotional Molehills and Mountains. We really need to zero in on emotional overexcitability because it impacts our classrooms every single day. First things first, children do not just grow out of these supersensitivities. An emotionally intense child, they become an emotionally intense adult. They experience deep empathy and form incredibly strong attachments, but they also battle intense self-criticism and anxiety. To them, the emotional molehill is, without a doubt, a mountain. Because their empathy is so high, they can end up absorbing the emotions of literally everyone around them. This leads to major overgiving and burnout. They often feel like exposed wires in a world of sensory overload. And this is why telling an intense student to just ignore the teasing or don't let it bother you is completely useless. It's impossible advice for them to follow. And this plays out a bit differently across genders too. Boys often face huge peer pressure to hide these exposed wires so they look tough, while girls might feel an intense pressure to completely downplay their intellect just to survive the social overload. And that social aspect brings us to Module 4, the social disconnect. Take that exposed wire existence, combine it with their asynchrony, and you have a perfect recipe for a kid who feels completely alienated from their peers. Because they're grappling with massive existential questions at such a young age, stressing over war, poverty, the injustices of the world, they feel a huge social disconnect from kids their own age who are just, trying to fit in. One gifted child actually described feeling like an abandoned alien waiting for the mothership to come and take them home. Wow, right? That profound loneliness is exactly why strategic classroom cluster grouping is so essential. They desperately need to find their fellow aliens to feel any real sense of belonging. Because they are highly idealistic and have a razor-sharp sense of justice, these students are exactly the unreasonable ones George Bernard Shaw is talking about here. They are driven to fix a broken world, not just adapt to it. So yeah, they are absolutely going to challenge you. They'll push back against traditions whenever they feel an authority figure is being unjust. So, how do we handle this? Let's dive into Module 5, Strategies for Classroom Support. Look, teaching intense students is exhausting. We all know it, but we have to validate their struggle. A great rule of thumb to share with parents, too, is this. Our kids are normal. They just aren't typical. We have to meet them where they are, in their specific normal, and validate their neurodivergent development instead of trying to force them into a neat, typical little box. Let's think about our real scenario. Before you react to an emotional outburst in your classroom, stop. Take a breath. Remember their chronological age. A gifted first grader who can fluently explain the physics of black holes might still completely lose it over a broken pencil and just need a comforting hug. Both of those realities are totally valid. This is also exactly why we have to ruthlessly praise their effort, not just their easy achievements. When we promote positive coping strategies, like celebrating the hard work of learning rather than just handing out a high five for a perfect grade, we help them build the emotional resilience they need for when that pencil inevitably snaps. Now, on a more serious note, we also need to be hyper-vigilant for signs of severe existential depression. Because their thoughts are so deep and globally focused, their risk level is much higher. You need to look out for sudden changes in sleeping or eating habits, pulling away from friends, or any unnatural preoccupation with death. These are major red flags that we literally cannot afford to ignore. If you suspect a student is struggling, here's the essential step-by-step protocol. First, give immediate emotional support. Sometimes offering relatable books or media can really help them feel less alone in their intensity. Second, evaluate the degree of risk. And third, take immediate action. Loop in the school counselor and the parents right away so you can build a unified, proactive safety net around that child. I want to leave you with one final thought to take back to your schools. The very next time a gifted student overreacts to something minor, what are you going to see? Are you going to see a disruption that needs immediate discipline, or are you going to see an exposed wire that desperately needs to be grounded? Will you just see the behavior, or will you choose to see the complex, neurodivergent experience underneath it? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope it helps you connect more deeply with those brilliant, intense minds sitting right there in your classroom.
That's all for today, beautiful souls. I don't usually recommend random spiritual tools online. But after years in this space, I've found a few things that actually feel thoughtful instead of hype-driven. One of them is this offer link below. If you've ever wanted a more personalized perspective on your numbers, life path, and recurring patterns, take a look at the free experience in the description. Like, share, comment, subscribe, and follow for more angel number insights, spiritual mindset upgrades, and manifestation wisdom. Thanks for supporting and watching. Have a great day.